Hi there. My name is Cindy Dean, and I'm the instructor for EDU 250. So welcome to the course. This video is meant to introduce you to our first week and the first chapter of reading in our textbook, which is Teachers, Schools, and Society. If you have not obtained your textbook yet, you should get it right away. I don't want you to get held up on reading assignments. The assignments that we do are predicated on the reading, so it'll be important for you to have it. We're using the 9th edition this year. If you have the 10th edition, that would work as well. Editions below 9th probably will not work as well. So please do get it. The bookstore has the book. I don't believe they're out, but you will need to check if you still don't have it. So this week's reading is entitled Becoming a Teacher. And I just wanted to chat with you a little bit about some of the important aspects of this particular chapter and some of the things to kind of foreshadow a little bit of where we're going to be going and what we're going to be doing. I hope you've already viewed the orientation video that I posted in the announcements. That is kind of a whirlwind tour of the Blackboard site and where to find things there. So let's begin. So why teach? Why in the world does someone want to teach in today's climate? And I say that tongue-in-cheek because I love teaching. I loved it when I did it in high school, and I love it now that I'm doing it here at the university. But really, education is under siege these days. If you have watched the news and read the news reports, there's a lot going on in education, both at the government, federal government level, the state government level, and at our community level. Most notably, there is a lot of controversy around Common Core state standards, teacher evaluation, and standardized testing. We're going to deal with those throughout this course. Not in depth as we do in some of the other courses, but we're going to talk about them because it's important as we think about the landscape of teaching. And this course is a foundations course meant to help you understand both the historical aspects of teaching, the current aspects, and some possible future aspects, and to think about the things that teachers have to deal with on a daily basis. So that will be important. So I come back to the question again, why teach? Why does someone want to teach? The salary is not that great. Your book will give you a list of beginning salaries, and I think it's the 2007 salaries they have. This is an older text. By the way, the reason I use the older text is because it's much less expensive for you. So I think the newest edition is close to $200, so this makes much more sense, and we can supplement it with other things. So salary is okay, but it's not all that great. It's $30,000 is the beginning salary. The base beginning salary for a teacher in Maine, and that's because there's legislation that mandated that. Some schools pay more for beginning teachers, and of course, as you gain tenure and time, you do earn more money. Although the teacher evaluation system now is, there are some things going on there that we'll talk about later as well in terms of do you get raises simply for adding another year of teaching, or must there be some other criteria for you to get raises? And we'll talk about that. So I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but I think we should talk about this why be a teacher kind of thing and kind of look at some of the good things about it and some of the bad things. And your book lays this out pretty well, but I kind of want to talk about it a little bit because it kind of gets glossed over a little bit in the book. So some of the bad things, again, I mentioned the salary is not that great. But then again, it may be a raise in salary for some people who've been working entry-level jobs, been working like crazy to get their education in, so they can have a better salary. So in some cases, it is a step up, and that's a good thing. Teachers are generally well respected, particularly in their own communities and by the parents of the students they teach. However, as I just noted, the national climate today is really kind of down on teachers. Teachers get blamed for a lot of the evils of the world that really aren't teachers' fault. We'll talk more about that as well. But, we hear a lot about failing schools, low test scores, and the blame for that gets dumped on the backs of teachers many times, and that's unfair because there are many other factors that go into that. Poverty is the number one factor for children not doing well in school. And so we have to think about those things in terms of when we become teachers, that we're going to have really wide shoulders to kind of take care of those things and bear that burden. Um, there's also the idea that, working in schools, be working with lots of people, working with children, working with others, a very collaborative and collegial situation. And many times it is, but it's also very isolating. You're in a classroom all day long. You can't take a break and go to Starbucks for, a latte. You're there. And then sometimes it's just so busy that you almost don't see anybody except for your students during the whole day. Um, Maybe another teacher at lunch, or on professional development days. So it can be very isolating, and we have to be able to understand that when we move into the teaching profession. And the fact that we're with children all day long sometimes sounds great, but there'll be days when you just want an adult person to talk with. Students will appreciate you most of the time, particularly if you're teaching in the younger grades. They're wonderful. They're very forgiving of anything that happens, and they love their teachers. As students get older, they get a bit jaded and schooled, and we do have to do a fair amount of teacher acrobats to keep them interested. But the teacher can be blamed for a lot of things as well, and so again, we have to have broad shoulders to be able to bear that. And as our children get older, often the parents disappear. They seem to go away, and we have to kind of find them. They don't show up for parent-teacher night, or they're busy, or whatnot. So sometimes we don't have as much contact with parents with older students as we do with the younger guys. Intellectual stimulation. Absolutely. In some situations, absolutely. You're constantly being reinvented in terms of what you know, your content knowledge. Hopefully, you're continuing your professional development. You're working with other teachers. You're reading a great deal. You look behind me and you see my professional library, and this is only a piece of it. And so, yes, intellectually stimulating. You're constantly moving and learning and thinking and redoing your practice. But it can also be very repetitive. If you're teaching year after year after year, you have to work very hard at not being repetitive and work very hard at being fresh and not stale. And for many of us, we become a teacher because we want to make a difference. And that is absolutely a wonderful reason to become a teacher. It's why I became a teacher. I wanted to make a difference, and I hope I have in the lives of my students. But sometimes as we begin with this great deal of enthusiasm and idealism, and sometimes we lose that as we go along if we're not careful and keep ourselves invested and again, fresh. So there's some goods and bads to teaching, and I want you just to think about that. And I would invite you to make your own list of the positives and negatives for teaching. And by the way, I often get a lot of people who say, well, I want to be able to have my summers off, and I want to help you think about that. While you might not be in a classroom during the summertime, summers usually are reserved for professional development, for planning for the next year. There are always post-school and preschool meetings, getting your classroom ready for the next year. So that 8 weeks in the summer dwindles quite rapidly. And if you're going to keep up your professionalism, you're going to be doing maybe courses in the summertime, professional reading, those sorts of things. So having summers off is not a good reason to become a teacher because you don't really get the summers off. Okay, so let's talk then again about teaching as a profession. I consider teaching a profession, but I think you'll find that because of the history of teaching, that some will not necessarily see it as a profession on par with that of perhaps a lawyer, a doctor, even an accountant. And here's the reason why. It wasn't all that many years ago that teachers were sort of just pulled off the street. Anyone could be a teacher. Indentured servants were brought to this country to be teachers. Most elementary teachers hadn't even attended high school or secondary school, but became teachers of young children simply because they'd been in a classroom, so they became a teacher. And it was generally male-dominated. It was men who were teachers. When females first became teachers, they were really second-class citizens and treated quite like that. If you look in your book, there's a contract, I think, from the 19th century for a female teacher, and it's really quite blatantly awful, if I must say so myself. That you have to be in by a certain time. You can't be seen in public with certain people. I invite you to look it over. So really, when females began to enter the teaching field, they really were not considered, they really were second-class citizens and were subjected to a lot of rules that men were not. Most secondary ed teachers, though, historically were men, and they had some sort of college education. And it wasn't until the mid 20th century that normal schools came about. And normal schools were institutionalized schools, 2-year schools to prepare teachers to teach elementary school. Um, and it wasn't until later on that that became a 4-year degree. So I'm going to show my age in that when I was in elementary school, my teachers had gone to normal school and had 2 years of teaching and had to, when they changed these rules, had to go back to school to get another 2 years of school so they could keep their credentials. So it hasn't been all that long ago that 4-year degrees were instituted for all teachers. And so when you think of that trajectory of history, you can see why that some people may not consider teaching a profession because it grew from its humble roots. And now we have teachers with multiple master's degrees, certificates of advanced study, and doctoral degrees. We have nationally board certified teachers. We have master teachers. So there's a whole host of now of credentialing that's available for teachers. So I think we're on our way to becoming recognized as a viable profession. Teacher education today is another topic that's addressed here, and this is a good place for me to help you think about where you are at UMA. I know some of you in this course are not education students, some of you are ILS students, some may be in mental health and human services. That's fine. I'm going to treat you all the same because this is an introductory to education course. But most of you are on some trajectory to become a teacher, whether it's K through 3, birth through 5, K through 8, 7 through 12, special ed sometimes. So UMA does not have a bachelor's degree in education, and those of you in the program know that. But the state offers an alternative pathway to certification, and that's the pathway that UMA works through, and it's called Alternative Pathway Number 2, and it's through transcript analysis. So all of the courses that UMA offers are approved by the state of Maine for certification, those courses that are required for certification. We have a lot of educational electives. But those courses that are required for certification for elementary ed and early elementary and early childhood and secondary ed are all vetted by the state. So when you take our courses, you can be assured that they will count towards certification. So we've developed pathways that provide the courses the state requires. We offer guidance for the praxis exams, which I'll talk about later, not today. I don't want to overwhelm you. And we help you with the student teaching. So for secondary ed folks, I'm the placement coordinator for student teaching. And for elementary ed, I assist the Presque Isle people. They do the actual placement, but applications come to me for verification. And then Machias facilitates the special ed. I also facilitate the K through 3 certification here. And there is no student teaching for the birth through 5. So we have this pathway that provides you with the courses you need, and we encompass those in minors. So you can do a degree program with a minor in early childhood education, which is the B through 5, early elementary, which is the K through 3, elementary, which is the K through 8, and secondary, which is the 7 through 12, or special ed, which is K through 12. So that's the way that UMA works. But other institutions actually have degrees in education. So you go and enroll in a degree in education, and you acquire your education courses, your general education courses, and your electives through that degree program. There's a lot of talk today about teacher education courses or programs not being rigorous enough, and so forth and so on. I think the jury's still out on that one. But in any event, I urge you in your teacher education programs to go beyond the minimum. We may have provided you with the courses the state requires for certification, but I absolutely encourage you to go beyond that and expand your horizons. Many of you have electives that you can take. Use those electives for more education courses. You will be very grateful for that in the long run, especially when you get in the classroom. A couple of myths about teaching I want to debunk first up. One is that teachers are born not made. I don't agree with that. I think maybe some people have personalities that may suit themselves better to teaching, but that doesn't mean that we can't learn to be teachers. Another myth is that you only need to know your subject area. If you know your stuff, anybody can teach, and I absolutely disagree with that. I think there has to be a foundation of pedagogical knowledge, the knowledge of how students learn, the learning process, the psychology of learning, philosophies of learning, all of those things, classroom management. If we don't know those things, how will we know how to reach all children at all times? Because they certainly are not all the same. You'll find that out very soon. And then if any of you have children, you know that. You know that they're not the same. And that teachers are less talented than other college graduates. And again, I think that comes from that humble beginnings of teachers not having to have any credentials now to having multiple credentials. So I think that's it's kind of pulled along with it, that you can't do anything else, then you should become a teacher. And that doesn't help anybody, and I think we need to debunk that. So I know you'll still hear it, but just don't pay attention to it. One of the couple of last things I wanted to mention is that, again, you'll hear a lot about schools being in crisis, low test scores, all of that. Again, we'll probably touch on that almost every class because it is so prevalent out there and relate it to the topic that we're looking at. But I would invite you to really investigate, is this really true? Are our schools in crisis? In fact, our test scores haven't changed much in the last 10 years. We hear a lot of the political arena telling us that they've plummeted, they're horrible in comparison to other countries. We're doing terribly. Well, in comparison to other countries, we're not doing as well as some of the others, but we're not those other countries either. We have different populations and we're different ways of teaching. I'm not saying it's the best. I'm just saying it's different. So it's very hard to compare them because you're comparing apples and oranges sometimes. So I would invite you to keep an open mind as we move through the course on that. And then the last thing is to think about, this is your foundations course. Some of you have already taken other education courses, but in general speaking, this is usually one of the first ones people take. And a lot of people ask me, what can I do to really enhance my position for a job later on when I do graduate? One of the things is to plan ahead and really think about what you want your coursework to look like. If you're in a Bachelor of Arts of Liberal Studies, you have a lot of flexibility, and many of you are in that degree program for elementary ed and some of the secondary ed folks as well. Take the time to meet with your advisor. And if you're in an education pathway, that's moi. I am your academic advisor until I get some help, which I'm hoping that we will hire someone soon. But nonetheless, I'm your academic advisor. You certainly can get advice from the Advising Center in Bangor or Augusta or at the university centers. They're very good at helping. They may not know all the nuances of the education pathway, so it's good for you to check in with me occasionally just to make sure that you are planning ahead as you should. Oftentimes, the advising people who are not academic advisors will say, well, that looks like a great course to take, but you don't need it. Well, you may not need it in terms of credit hours or in terms of your degree progress, but if you've got room for it, it's probably, it might be a good class for you to take. So there are other reasons to take courses rather than whether it's on your check sheet or not. So that's another good reason to check with me. So plan ahead and plan your courses carefully. Plan your praxis exams. I've seen so many people get to the end of their degree program and hit a brick wall because they have not taken their praxis exams. Again, we'll talk more about that later on, but take them early. Plan to take them early. Network. I know many of you already work in schools as either ed techs or administrative assistants or in some capacity. Maybe you're a parent volunteer. So make connections and network with people. Talk with your children's teachers. Talk with your colleagues, and make those connections. The more connections you have, the better off you are in terms of a job placement later on. And then develop your resume and your portfolio. And this course will give you ample opportunity to do both. Part of the requirements for this course is to construct a beginning portfolio. So when you leave this course, you will have a shell of an electronic portfolio with some work from this course that you will continue to add to as you continue through your degree program. So that's it for Chapter 1. It's really been nice talking with you. I wish you could talk back to me, but do talk back to me in an asynchronous way. Feel free to email me in your discussion forum this week. Talk to one another. I'm available almost all the time, so please avail yourself of me both as the instructor for this course and as your academic advisor. Have a great day.